Positive psychology is a movement in academia that began about a decade ago, but is based upon research that we've been having for a very long time. But we're now starting based upon brain scans and being able to have some advances in psychology to learn so much more. But it's based upon this principle. Instead of studying what's merely the average or below average, positive psychology rather seeks to study what is above average, to find out what is working instead of what is not working. We need to study the people that are extremely healthy as opposed to only studying those that are unhealthy. In medical school, if you know people that have been to medical school or you know people there now, there's something called the medical school syndrome. Medical school syndrome is where, as you're reading through all the lists of symptoms, you suddenly realize, I have all of these. My brother-in-law called me from medical school and he said, Shawn, I have leprosy. And I had no idea how to console him because he had just gotten over menopause. We are what we study. And currently there's a 21-to-1 negative to positive ratio in terms of the way we study psychology. We know a lot about how to be unhealthy and to be sick. We know very little about how to be happy and to thrive. That was until positive psychology, which instead decides to look at not the average or the main pattern, but as you can see in the top right graph there, this is just a really brief statistics introduction for positive psychology, that you can see that there's this one red dot that doesn't fit. Now, students that are just learning about statistics and psychology are taught in the statistical package you can see in the bottom left-hand corner how to remove that outlier. It doesn't fit the pattern. And chances are it could be a measurement error. So you learn to get that out of the way so you can make sure you can publish, because you've got a great line going there otherwise. But my question is this, and positive psychology asks this. It says, what if that's not a measurement error? What if that is a Michael Jordan, or a Mother Teresa, or a Martin Luther King Jr., or a Roger Bannister? I don't want to delete positive outliers. I want to learn from them. I want to learn from them how they got up so high for whatever dimension it is, whether it's resiliency, happiness, energy, strength, how long they live, how many people that they feel like that they can care for, humor levels, whatever it is. We want to learn from them. And then we'll take those ideas, glean those ideas, and then move the average up. That is positive psychology in a nutshell. And I would say positive psychology, put simply, is merely the study of human potential. Modern society has put the cart before the horse. In the past, we thought that if you worked hard and were successful, then you would be happy. That's what all these Harvard students are taught. That's what we teach our children. That's what we teach. That's part of values and ethics. Work hard and you'll be happy in the future. Turns out we've gotten the order wrong all along. Turns out, if you're happy before doing an activity, if you're positive before doing the task, you increase your successfulness at completing that task by up to 50%. So in research on this, they took 4-year-olds and they had them do block shape experiments. You probably don't call, if you have kids, you probably just call them playing with blocks. I can't wait to have kids. I need somebody to experiment on. In this, they took these 4-year-olds and they had them put together blocks as fast as possible and gave them neutral instructions about that. But then they had another group, a different group, that they gave the same neutral instructions, but before they did the task, they said, think of your happiest memory. Now, they probably said something like, I had Jell-O for lunch. That was my happiest memory ever. And you can hear the parents in the background going, no, your 3rd birthday was your best memory. That took forever. As long as it makes them happy, what we find is that their happiness level is that they're primed to be happy before doing a task. Their success rate and their speed for doing the task increases by up to 50%. Now this is remarkable. This means that perhaps by infancy, but at least by the age of 4, our brains are hardwired to perform at optimal levels, not in neutral, but at happy. Now you're probably thinking to yourself, I'm much more complex than a 4-year-old. Probably that's not true. But let's take it if you want. Let's look at a group that's very complex and cynical. Take a group of doctors. And you take doctors, you prime one group to be happy, one group to be neutral, and you give another group a scientific journal to read before making medical diagnoses. Then you have them make these medical diagnoses as fast as you can. And what we find is that the group that's primed to be happy versus the group that was both neutral and the one that was primed to be thinking about science, outperformed them by the exact same percentage. We saw a 50% faster rate of correct diagnosis that were occurring, and a 3 times greater increase of the intellectual flexibility that was occurring. And they were not primed by thinking of your happiest memory or giving them a complex philosophical treatise on happiness. No, candy. We gave them candy, and they weren't even allowed to eat it because blood sugar might mess up our results. If I gave you 15 different intelligence tests and prime you to be happy beforehand, you significantly perform better on all 15 of those intelligence tests. You actually perform more intelligently when you're primed to be positive beforehand. Now, if you think about this, this changes everything. It changes the way that we studied, right? Where we would go in cramming and stressed about an exam before we took the test. We would have been much more successful and accurate on the test if we had actually spent those minutes making a friend or telling a joke. In the same way, true in the business world. If we send out neutral instructions to our employees where we tell them to do a task through an email or a memo, without priming them first to be positive, we are handicapping them in terms of their productivity and successfulness rates by up to 50%. That changes a lot. Oh, that picture? That was if you're curious about what love looks like for a college male student, that's love in a brain scan. I just think that's interesting. If you have them think about sex, the rest of it lights up. I love this study. This is one of my favorite studies. It's called the Nun Study from 1932. Nuns are great because they wear the same clothes, they eat the same food, they live in the same place. You don't have to pay them very much. But they're great. So what we did is we took these nuns and we had them write in a journal for 3 weeks, and based just upon their journal, we put them into categories, quartiles of happiest to the least happy, then watched them over time. By age 85, the happiest quartile, 90% of them were alive at 85, based just upon these journals. 70% of the unhappiest quartile had passed away by the same age. That's a remarkable split, and shows how happiness over time builds up within our system to cause changes in our immune system, but also in our longevity. Even in the business world, we're seeing that Sandra Lubomirsky came up with all of the different statistics of how happiness affects somebody in the workplace, and found that individuals are primed to be happy before doing tasks in the workplace, and positive companies these individuals are better at securing jobs, better at keeping jobs, superior productivity, greater performance, more resiliency, less burnout, less turnover, and greater sales. Partly because they're perceived as more attractive, they're perceived as more trustworthy, and they're perceived as more persuasive as a result of that. It's a remarkably unfair advantage to those who go in positive to an event as opposed to neutral or depressed.